Hello and welcome again to the Ryder Review. This is Eric Carrot Ryder, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 1994 family drama titled Little Women. Now, Little Women runs for 1 hour and 58 minutes long. It is directed by Gillian Armstrong. It is produced by Denise DeNovi. The script was written by Robin Swycord. And it is based off of the novel, also titled Little Women, by Louisa May Alcott. The score was done by Thomas Newman, the cinematography by Jeffrey Simpson, and it was edited by Nicholas Bowman. And the stars of the movie are Winona Ryder, no relation, just gotta get that out of my system. Okay, we also have Gabriel Byrne. We have Trini Alvarado, Samantha Mathis, Kristen Dunst, who, by the way, are playing two roles. Playing the same role, but just two different actresses. Because in the early scenes in this movie, Kristen Dunst plays a younger version, and Samantha Mathis plays an older version of, I think it's, Amy March. Amy March, I should say. Yes, we have Claire Danes. We have a pre-famed, pre-Batman Christian Bale, one of his more earlier performances. Let's see, winding off the bat here, we have Eric Stoltz. We have Mary Wicks in probably, I think, one of her last roles before she passed on in 1995. We have Susan Sarandon, who is kind of taking more of a backseat here. She's playing more of a supporting role, but she's really keeping it low-key here. We also have John Neville, Matthew Walker, Florence Patterson, and Jenny Mortill. Now, usually a movie of this caliber, many people might think of it as, one of these holiday Hallmark Christmas type movies. And people are thinking, why are you rushing right now? Can't you wait in a couple of months before the holiday season begins? Yeah, I guess I could have. But I chose to do it now. Why? Because, hey, it's my channel and I could do what I want. So sue me. No. No. Enough of that. Just kidding. I don't know. I just thought it was probably the right time for me to do a review based off of Little Women. Being aside from a journalist who looks at nonfiction stories, sometimes, you just gotta pull back and read some great fine work of fiction. So this marks the 5th adaptation of the classic novel by Louisa May Alcott from 1868, as we watch the March sisters makes the transformations from little girls to mature adults, which truly has solidified the impact to today's audience, even though this movie was made in 1994. There have been 5 adaptations, including there was one that came out not too long ago, a more recent adaptation. I haven't looked at it yet, but maybe sometime in the future, maybe I will for future references. This adaptation is under the direction of Gillian Armstrong, as she succeeds in staying true to the novel and has both similarity and differences from all other adaptations before and after this one. Okay, this is definitely the tale of 4 empowered sisters who have diverse personalities, and they are very strong in the department of melodrama, but in the highest of compliments, as each of the performances conveys charm and sophistication that makes each scene feel more carefree and easier to watch. I'm glad that, it's not just, one monster with four heads. No, these are four completely different sisters who have a wide range of character traits, but they all succeed in keeping it real. And even though it has the focal point of female empowerment, it doesn't go to the point where it's cringy, rubbed in our faces, and makes you feel shameful. No, these women are not out to shame anybody. They just have individual, independent points of view and have unique, different character traits that are believable and not forceful. Sure, it may not have an original spin like the other adaptations. It's pretty much a follow-up from the pages of Louisa May Alcott. But with memorable characters, I'm sure there'll be much to remember about them. Now, unless you haven't read the novel or have seen the other adaptations, Little Women focuses on the March clan during the time when the men were often battled during the civil wars in the late 1850s till the mid-1860s. The March clan resides in the Orchard House, located in Concord, Massachusetts. The head matriarch is named Marmee, who is a very strong-willed individual. She's played by Susan Sarandon. She is under the independent care of her four daughters, while her husband, played by Matthew Walker, is off fighting in the war, and then he eventually gets badly wounded, in which Marmee tends to him to get back in health. As for the four daughters, they develop a strong bonding that very few people keep them apart. They are a solid union. They're always there for each other. They always have each other's backs. In fact, I think this whole sibling dynamic thing is just so rich and so vibrant. Sometimes, it's a very rare thing to see. Because, in most households, a lot of siblings simply can't stand one another. And that the more divided they are, the better they are. I mean, I've seen too many families where siblings practically almost want to destroy one another. Well, maybe not necessarily. There's fighting, there's dysfunction, there's incoherency, there's a lack of cohesiveness in a lot of family dynamics. But you won't find that in this novel. And you won't find that in this movie. They all each care for each other, and they would even drop everything that they're doing just to be with them. Whenever there's trouble, whenever something's happening to them, they always stick together. They have this real camaraderie that you don't find nowadays. They are all very strong-willed and each have individual personalities. We have Jo, or Josephine, played by Winona Ryder, who is maybe a little bit more like a rebellious type, but she also does have a heart of gold, like underneath all that rage and rebelliousness. She can be a bit impetuous at times, but underneath all that hardcore, underneath all that hard outer core, there is a soft shell, and there is a soft spot inside. Then we have the elaborate-minded Meg, played by Trini Alvarado. Meg comes across that even though the March family, ever since their father got wounded, they've been struggling financially and also personally. There is some personal friction, like you would probably expect in a typical family. But even if they argue and fight and shout, they always seem to stick together and try to work things out as much as they could. You also have the introverted but sweet Beth, played by Claire Danes, who's also pretty talented as a piano player. And then you have Amy, who at the beginning comes across as kind of a bit of the mischievous runt in the litter type of character. But then once she becomes a little older, she becomes much more level-headed. Amy was played in her younger days by Kristen Dunst, and then in her later years by Samantha Mathis. And even though their unity seems like a hard nut to crack, there are men who do come into their lives. Even though this movie is called Little Women, we have men characters in there too. And they're not just playing, insignificant pieces of meat. No, they also have character traits in there, and they're also very likable as well. Let's see, we have Theodore Lawrence, or as he likes, or most of his close friends refer to him as Laurie, played by Christian Bale. This is his breakthrough performance. Yeah, okay, many people are going to say, oh, it was Batman that made him the star. Sure, okay, fine. In that Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy, yes, Christian Bale started to get more noticed. And then, of course, there's also the movie The Fighter, where he played Dickie Eklund. And if I'm not mistaken, he was also a winner in the Best Supporting Actor category. But, okay, but then again, he's done other roles too, dating as far back as the late 80s, early 90s. But I think this performance here as Theodore Lawrence, or this, like I said, his close friends refer to him as Laurie, this is Christian Bale's breakthrough performance. And he's a neighbor and a friend of the Marches, who is very cultural in nature, who also has the love for the piano, and then later goes on to marry Amy. And then you have John Brooke, played by Eric Stoltz, who's a working-class tutor who eventually develops a crush on Meg. And we also have Professor Bale, played by Gabriel Byrne, who's a German immigrant. I believe he's also a history professor. And he eventually marries Jo, which I actually found a little bit awkward. And this is not to sound ageist, but I thought the age difference was a little awkward, being the fact that he was practically almost 20 years her senior. He was like 20 years older than her. So, I don't know. I think it would have been much better. She probably would have just fell in love with someone more close to age. But hey, who am I to judge? You fall in love with the people you choose. Nobody chooses them for them. All right. The beauty of Little Women is truly dependent on the cinematography by Jeffrey Simpson and backed by a great score by Thomas Newman. Thomas Newman was also nominated for Best Composer for this movie, as well as Winona Ryder was nominated for Best Actress in a Leading Role, and also I think for Best Script was also nominated, and that was from Robin Swikard. So yeah, the cinematography by Jeffrey Simpson and the score by Thomas Newman was absolutely priceless. really, really excellent in its execution. The technical aspects are as immaculate as they come, but it still comes down to the acting that really makes the difference here. Winona Ryder was the real standout as Jo. She was, of course, the character that personifies the novelist Alcott herself. If it wasn't for the disciplined direction from Gillian Armstrong, Ryder probably would have carried the film on her own. But still, hey, it's good that all the other sisters have their turn to shine. Trini Alvarado, even though she knows that her family is going through financial struggles, they were once an upper class family, but then her father got wounded in the war, and the money and the finances were getting lower and lower. And even though she knows that her family is not as rich as they once were or as rich as she thought they were, she still somehow still manages to keep her upper class demeanor intact. We also, of course, I mentioned before, Amy, she was kind of mischievous at first, but then grew to a certain level of level-headedness. I thought it was a little awkward that one time we were seeing a rambunctious, sort of cynical character in Amy, and then all of a sudden she's become much more mature and much more quiet. But I think the weakness is that it just seems like she just took a 180 turn. Now, okay, yes, I understand that people change, but I would have liked to have seen maybe just a little bit of Kristen Dunst's energetic performance come into the performance of Samantha Mathis. That would have been maybe just a tad bit more believable. Nothing personal to take away from Samantha Mathis, but I thought that her role as Amy was probably, in my opinion, the most weakest. It's not to say that she didn't seem bored, but she also felt like Amy was just a completely different person. And last but not least, and definitely not least, we also have Claire Danes' character as Beth, very talented piano player. Also kind of felt a little insecure because she thought that she didn't really bring very much to the table as compared to their more ambitious sisters. She kind of is a very, very introverted individual. And during the scenes where she suffered from scarlet fever, which really brought her down quite a lot. But then she kind of like recovered, but not very much of a recovery. Because I guess back then, scarlet fever, if you ended up getting it, well, you don't get it, it gets you. It's one of those kind of diseases. Is that even though maybe you might be recovered back to good health, chances are it will eventually come back to you. And unfortunately, that's what happened with Elizabeth, or Beth for short. And of course, there was a sad moment where she sadly passed away. And like I said before, even a grown man can cry. There's no harm in that if you actually do break down in tears about Elizabeth or Beth's death. It's okay. There's nothing to be ashamed of. In fact, I actually thought that her death scene was effective, even though it was heartbreaking. But she also pulled it off very well. The only thing that prevents the character's portrayals to near perfection is the shift of character from youngest daughter Amy, from a spunky little kid played by Dunst, to a more sedate adolescent played by Samantha Mathis. That's really, truly like what I just said before. It just felt very awkward. So long before rising to superstar status, Christian Bale definitely was struggling to make a name for himself at the time. And, prior to Little Women, he was in mediocre movies like Newsies and Swing Kids. But he now looked primed for the big time in his role as Laurie. He really outdid himself here compared to his previous outing, which he did with Robert Sean Leonard in the streets of Germany during the Nazi invasion. Like I said, if there was a weakness to Little Women, it would be that the story was just as little to absolute no flaws within the characters. I know maybe people are saying, why is that a bad thing? I mean, they're all likable, right? Yes. They all seem to stick out for one another. True. And that there are people who accept the March sisters for who they are, regardless of their wealth or their struggling to make ends meet. Do people care about them? For sure. So what's wrong with that? It just sometimes feels unnatural because, as much as I hate to say this, but humans are not all naturally this caring or this giving. I know that sounds a little borderline misanthropic on my part, and if I do sound a bit misanthropic in my analogy, I'm sorry, but it's a well-known fact that a lot of human beings, maybe even me myself included, have a certain dosage of selfishness. Here it seems like everybody gets along and everybody seems hunky-dory and everybody all gathers around the piano to play merry little tunes and open their Christmas presents and enjoy the good things of life. And that everything just seems to be so natural. And that even though they're struggling financially, they're still a happy-go-lucky family. And even though the family values in here, depicted in here, are just so warm and so cuddly, sometimes I think it's just way too sugar-coated. I would love to have seen maybe a little bit of conflict. I would have loved to have seen even though there were a few scenes that involved around some hostilities, especially between the scenes where Amy took Joe's written script because Joe had aspirations of wanting to become a playwright, and Amy took her papers and threw them in the fire, and Joe said that she wanted to kill Amy, even though I know she didn't really mean to say it, but. And even that was only just temporary, and was eventually gotten over rather quickly. Okay, maybe I'm not expecting to see them trying to rip their hairs out of their heads or constantly fighting. And no, I probably would not want to see Amy with a bloody nose or anything like that. No. But it's just that there is no real clear conflicts that seem to be brewing. Everything just seems to be so arbitrarily calm that it just feels very unnatural. We should expect to see some hostilities, some tensions. Maybe the closest character who actually shows a little bit of realism was Winona Ryder's character of Joe or Josephine. She's probably maybe the most believable character in this. I mean, even when they had the news that their father was wounded in the war, which should have been a really tense moment, was just way too unnaturally calm. I mean, all the characters appear to be so sweet and kind and lovable to the point it gives you a cavity in your mouth. There's very little scenes when someone says something mean-spirited. And though there is little conflicts, they still kind of come across as being hard to believe, as being a natural conflict, because it's usually easily forgotten, solved, or easily forgiven. And this is why everything feels so saccharine and immaculate. It at times feels, like I said, unnatural. But aside from that, I still think it's a great adaptation, and the movie itself is handled with great care. It's definitely truly a period piece that's still a timeless classic that one can enjoy for the light piece of family entertainment. If I was to give a score out of 10, I think I would give Little Women, I would give it an 8.5 out of 10. I really, really still enjoyed it. The direction was really good. It was great that we had some great character development. Nobody felt insignificant. And even if you weren't a March sister like Professor Bale or Theodore Lawrence or some of the other male characters portrayed in there, they're not just, they're just not, pick of the week or just, window dressing for the female demographic. No, even they also played some very significant pivotal roles as well. So I would definitely highly recommend you people to see this 1994 adaptation of Little Women. So I guess this ends my Ryder review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. But just remember the 3 simple rules. Be kind, be courteous, and please refrain from any rude comments. And I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Ryder saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.